It didn't freak out.
Yay!
Yeah, yay is right. Hello, and welcome back to Book Chats with Mostly Books. I'm Jody.
And I'm Melissa.
Tonight we are doing the best of the best historical fiction, according to Melissa and I.
Yeah.
Because we've discovered we're kind of niche historical fiction readers.
Yeah. I thought I wasn't as niche, but I kind of am.
I know. I am the same way. And then you when you start to really think about the top books that you want to talk about, it was kind of like, oh, huh.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a theme.
Yes, exactly.
Well, let's just do some basic, what do you like about historical fiction? What makes you read this?
Well, it's interesting that I was trying to think back to when I started historical fiction, reading historical fiction, which I really don't remember. But, it surprised me that I got into the genre because history wasn't my favorite subject in school. I'm not a nonfiction reader. I mean, maybe occasionally, but not really. So I just was like, why am I going to read about history, even in fiction form? But once I got into it, I just enjoyed it. It's more about the characters, and it has to be a good story. And, I was surprised how much the books are, hopeful. And at least I read a lot of World War II, but there are a lot of hopeful and about surviving, the unthinkable, which I really enjoy reading about.
Oh, that's good. I like that. And it is interesting to note that you were like, oh, I don't know why I'd want to read this.
Yeah, exactly. And especially World War II, I'm just like, it's the war. Why do I want to read about it?
Right. It's bleak. It's sad.
Yeah.
I will admit I don't read a lot of World War II because I often think it's bleak and sad. But maybe I should read more World War II.
Some is definitely more intense and heavy, and some are a little more light. So you just have to find the right one.
The right one. So I need you to read it first and tell me if it's going to be okay for me. I don't remember when I started reading historical fiction either. I did it because I actually wanted some of the history, and I liked, I specifically liked the English courts, which I didn't really care so much about learning in school either, but I liked it when it was told in a historical fiction way, and you could walk around these palaces. I really am royalty. I just haven't found my court yet. It's coming one day. So I actually kind of seeked it out for that point, I guess. Similar but different. I didn't really want I didn't like history either, but I did want the history, and I felt this was a more approachable way for me to get my history. Yeah. With the assumption that what I'm being told is accurate.
Oh yeah, that is true.
I mean, they're going to take some liberties, so
yeah. But they do their research, and it's crazy.
Yeah, some of them do intense research.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, my friend. Do you want to start with your first pick?
Sure. So, in thinking about maybe what my first historical fiction was, and I don't remember exactly, but I do think it might have been the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society, or at least it was a very early one. I remember this book came, it's been out 12, 13 years now?
At least.
It's been out, and I'm sure everyone has read it, and their book club has read it by now, but if you haven't, you should. So, when it came out, I remember the bookstore I worked at the time, everyone was recommending it. There was such buzz and, great reviews about this book. But then I heard it was written in letters, and I was like, that's not for me. I'm just not a letter reader. So, I kind of put it off, and then finally I sat down and read it, and just loved it. It takes place post-World War II. It's in London. The city's sort of, getting back to normal per se, picking up the ruins of the war. And we begin with Juliet, who's our main character. She's a writer. She, during the war, she wrote some, war course, I don't know if she was a war correspondent, but she wrote sort of these, short stories or something that was just published. And so she's looking for her next project to write about. She wants something a little more in-depth and investigative and something like that. And then one day she gets a letter from a stranger. It's this man, Dossie, who lives on the island of Guernsey, which is in English Channel. And he found her name in a book that had belonged to her and just took a chance and wrote to her. And, liked the book that he had found her name in and wanted more books because it was hard for them to get books on the island. And so they begin corresponding back and forth. He talks about their society, which is what the title of the book is. You know, and it came to be because they were out past curfew and they needed an alibi for the German soldiers that stopped them. And it's a funny story about a roast pig. It's a fun story. And so she begins corresponding with him and the other members of the book club, and just getting to know them and their life on the island, what their life was like during the occupation. And it's just fun to read about the characters. I mean, I like this one because and if you're maybe sort of iffy about World War II fiction, this one is post-World War II. So all the information you get is in the past. And it's not, like, real intense or anything. Right. You know, the island wasn't on the front. So, you know, they were occupied by Germans, but there was no, like, battles or fighting on the island. So it's just a nice way to ease into the genre if you're thinking about it. And it's a great, you know, it's a love letter to books and book lovers. So if you like it, which I'm sure you do if you're watching this, this is a great book as well.
What did you think of the letter format?
I ended up really liking it. It didn't bother me.
Okay, good.
I think once you get into it and you sort of, like, you know, see how it goes, and it does read much easier than I thought it would. Yeah.
I will say this is one I've read. I also loved it. It was actually funny because we both picked it as our top read. I personally read it because of the letters.
Oh, okay.
I was like, post-World War II. Okay, but it's told in a unique way. I can do this.
Yeah.
And I really liked it. Like you said, the characters are so charming, and you go through a lot with them, even though it's all letter format.
Yeah.
It was always amazing to me to see how authors can incorporate so many feelings and emotions into a very unique writing style, like letters or lists or something.
Yeah, it surprised me as well. Yeah.
So I will second this as a top pick. Yes. So there you guys go. If you haven't read it, 2 people have told you to go do it. Anything else you want to say on that one?
I think that's it. No.
Well, I felt like I had to start with Outlander because it's Outlander. Have you read?
I have not. Okay. No. My dad and sister have, but I have not read them. I know I should.
You should.
I think they look so big and daunting.
No. I mean, yes. They are big and daunting. But I finished one and I'm like, when's the next one?
I know, and she takes a while to write them too.
Yes. Yeah. So Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. She's up to 8, maybe 9 is coming out in November.
Yeah, I can't remember what number it is.
I'm very excited. The next one is in November, regardless of what number it is. So this takes place, actually, I think it starts in World War II.
And you don't like reading World War II.
You don't stay in World War II. That's okay, because she time travels. And then you go back to Scotland, and it's like, I always get the year wrong. I think it's like 1744 or somewhere in that. And she's really just, man, Claire is thrown into this whole world where she thinks it's still like 1940 whatever. And all of a sudden, it's not. And she's like, literally the beginning is like she is stumbled upon by these like British soldiers who are like trying to attack her basically, and she's all confused, and she's out there in like a dress that's like getting very disheveled by this point.
Yeah, I imagine.
To the point where these British soldiers are like, what are you wearing?
Yeah. And it's probably not the style
at all. Yeah, it basically looks like a nightgown, I'm sure, to them, like a weird nightgown. But anyway, she's saved. I'm gonna do that because it's not really saved at the beginning, by these Scotsmen who are actually trying to like get away from these British soldiers. Anyway, so she gets taken with them, which is why it's not really saved, because she's basically taken in by this crew, and then they take her back to their more or less castle, and she has to go meet with the high chieftain or whatever he's called. Anyway, she ends up staying there because they're like, the guy knows something is up with her, but he's also like, I don't know what. Yeah. I don't know if you're a spy for the British, because you are not really filling in this, like they ask her like her name and why she's here, and she's trying to like come up with things as she's trying to piece together the fact that she's not in her own time any longer. Yeah. And so she's like pulling out as much history as she can to stay safe. But she ends up staying, even though she also tries to, like, run away, and it's unfortunate and kind of like, oh dear, what are we gonna do? But then she meets Jamie, who at first she's not really fond of, but we'll come to love Jamie.
Yeah.
In the end. So anyway, basically book 1 is her dealing with being a person out of time, trying to figure out the culture while trying to get back to her husband that she's supposedly vacationing. Well, she was vacationing with him, and he's off doing all this, like, historical research and blah blah blah, and they're trying to, like, rekindle their marriage after the war, and now she's like, how do I get back there? Right. It's really good. I really do finish these books and want to the next one immediately.
Oh,
like,
that's good to know. Yeah.
Diana's writing is so descriptive, and her characters are so, like, real. Like, I told her once when I met her, which I kind of blush thinking about this now, but I was like, they're like family, and it's true though. Like, these characters really are like family, and that's why, because they're such long books, you get to know so much of their detail of every day.
Yeah.
That's why it's, like, really hard when you finish one.
Oh yeah.
So I am very much looking forward to November.
Oh, good.
To say the least. History is really cool. Like, they stay in Scotland for a long time, but then the war happens between them and Britain or England, and so there's a lot of, like, wars actually that go on and like stuff, and then they get, anyway, it's a saga. But you do see a lot of history between Scotland and England, and then even the Americas, just, I guess, just North America. I don't think they go to South America. So that's kind of cool, and her research is meticulous. And she also has companion books to go along with this if you want more research on all the clans and, like, their, like, the history of them, as well as, like, their crests and all sorts of stuff. Yeah. So she is really good at her research.
Yeah, I've always found, like, the Scottish English history, not that I know much about it, but it sounds like it's really fascinating. Mm-hmm. So I think I should read those.
Yeah, and book 1 is a cliffhanger.
Well, they have to
preparing you now, and book 2 starts very intensely. But if you can get through the beginning of it, you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
And just keep remembering, there are more books, so it's going to be okay. Yeah. It is a little bit violent, so, like, if you're not a reader who looks for that, there is definitely wars and, like, rapes and stuff like that that happen in this book. So I do want to put out some triggers for this. But she really has great characters.
Oh, good.
So, yeah.
Sounds good. I know. I've been wanting to read them.
The first one's short. It's less than 900 pages.
Oh, okay. And in that size, the font is so itty-bitty tiny.
But buckle up. Every book gets bigger.
Yeah.
All right, my friend. What else do you have?
Okay, so my next pick is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. Another one I'm sure a lot of people have read. This one is World War II France. It's mainly about these two sisters. There's Vienne and Isabel. Vienne, I think she's like 28 when the book opens. There's like a 10-year age gap between Vienne and her sister Isabel. Okay. So they are not particularly close. Vienne is married. She has a 7 or 8-year-old daughter. Oh. So she's got her own life. And Isabel, I think, is like at boarding school, and she's rebellious and gets in trouble, and Vienne's like, she follows the rules. So they just could not be more different. So we open with Vienne's husband, who gets sent off to war. So she's left in the little village with her and her daughter. And eventually the Germans come in and occupy the town, and her house gets requisitioned. Mm-hmm. So she's forced to live with a German, I don't know if he's an officer, but a soldier of some kind. So they either have to live with him or they're out on their own. So she's just forced to, share her house, and, they're, they don't have the money for food and, all that stuff. So Isabel, she, is trying to find her way and what she should do in the world. And she, she falls in love with this guy. He eventually leaves her. But she gets caught up in the resistance, the underground resistance, and is, helping the down airmen escape into Spain. So she leads like the treks through the Pyrenees, and so that was fun to read about. So yeah, it's just about the two sisters and how they each approach the war differently, and how like they eventually come together, and there's parts about when they saved like Jewish children during the war too. So yeah, it's their journey through the war, and Kristen Hanna is a beautiful writer. Got me a little emotional.
That's fair.
Yeah, but I mean, there is it's war. There is some tough sections in the book, but you have to just expect that with these kind of books.
Yeah, I think you do with that kind of a style of a book. And I would think that the perspectives, because like you said, the sisters' ages are so different that they probably had such different, like, not approaches, but like different ways that they participated in this war.
Yeah, because like at the beginning, Vienne, just kind of put her head down and just kind of went with what was happening. She kind of just sat back and was like, well, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And then she eventually, like, finds her role.
Oh, that's good.
So, yeah.
And I have heard her writing is stellar, to say the least.
Yes. And I think when this book came out, it was, like, sort of a big departure for her other books. Like, I'd read some of her earlier ones, and, I mean, like her other ones, it is about, like, sisterhood and family, that she's had in her other books. But, yeah, this, I think, was her first, like, big historical.
Yeah. Yeah, I think her other ones are much more contemporary, for the exception of this one. I mean, I think
since she has,
exactly.
She's written, and she had, I think Winter Garden came out before this one.
It did.
Maybe as well, which I think got her into that time period. Even that was like Russia, but still like the war.
Oh, I didn't know
era.
that.
Yeah.
In World War II for the Winter Garden? Or is it a different?
I don't know if it was World War II or one.
Okay.
I think it was one of the two.
But in like the 1900s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just was curious. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I have not read that one. I should. It was so buzzed.
Yeah.
I should. I just have to get over my issues. All right. Well, next up I have The Constant Princess by Philippa Gregory, because I have already talked about The Other Boleyn Girl by Philippa Gregory. So I decided not to do that one again, because even though that might be my top one for the Tudors, we've already discussed it. So we're going to talk about The Constant Princess instead, which is actually Catherine of Aragon. So it's Henry's first wife, who he was married to for like 20 years, people. Like, this was a solid relationship. But this starts out with Catherine, where she's coming over from Spain, and she initially marries Arthur, which is Henry's older brother, who passes away. And I don't know how much of what Gregory portrays in this book with their relationship is accurate or not, but it was such a sweet romance between her and Arthur that I was very upset when he passed away, as obviously was Catherine in the book. So she portrayed that really well, and then she had to go on, and the way it's interpreted in this book is she kind of like goes on and doesn't really seduce Henry, but definitely make sure she catches his eye, because at this point she's like, well, what am I supposed to do? I'm in England. I am being told that marriage is maybe now invalid. I'm being threatened to be sent back home, but I can't really go back home, so I need to figure out how I'm staying here. And so Henry was pretty young when they first like got married. He was only like 17, 18, I think. Yeah. And she was years older, maybe 10 years. Do not quote me on these ages. I don't totally remember that part. But it was really cool to see her relationship with Arthur, then her relationship with Henry, like the amount of patience this girl had to get to being married to Henry. And then it was her and Henry's marriage. And actually, it was a pretty cool marriage. And she did a lot of neat things. And, she even led at some points battles when Henry was off doing something else. She had to fight. I think it was Scotland was trying to come down and invade while he was in France working out a deal with them. Court, man.
Yeah.
With all this stuff and borders.
Yeah. Lots of drama.
So, yeah. It was really good, and I really liked how it leads up to Anne Boleyn, and then you can read this and then go and read the other Boleyn girl, and you kind of see that whole picture of that first big affair and how that transpired.
So should you read this one first?
I would.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I would definitely do
I'm not
these.
good on my like Tudor timeline, so I don't know.
Call me. I can get you through all the wives. Yeah, I would definitely do them chronologically by the wives.
Oh, okay.
It gives you a better picture of Henry and how his overall, I want to say character arc, but I think it was also kind of his actual person arc as well.
Yeah.
Historical arc. But yeah, beautifully written again. I had a lot of emotions on this one. You can feel yourself walking down the palaces, like I said. Yeah. You feel it like when you go out and they do their like summer tour and all the journeys of that. I do love her writing. It's very descriptive. And her dialogue, which I've mentioned before, it feels sort of like the right time period, but it's also easy to read. So,
that's good.
Yeah, but it feels sort of like genuine for what you would want that to sound like in today's world. I know that sounds really weird.
Yeah, but it makes more sense to us.
Okay, yeah, exactly. So, and it didn't feel like forced or cliched in any way, which I appreciate, because I don't think that's always easy to do, especially if you are citing an actual historical text on something that they've said.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's hard to like get that in there accurately while still not sounding old.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I've always wanted to read her, and I just never have.
Yeah. Start with this one, and then do the other Boleyn girl, and then if you decide you're done, you're done.
Okay.
It's totally fine.
Those are the two I have to read? Okay.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Sounds good.
All right, you're up.
Okay. So my next one is not World War II. I know that's shocking to everyone. I managed to find one. Half-Life by Jillian Cantor. We love Jillian Cantor.
We do. She's a local.
If you are looking for World War II, she does have some great World War II books. They're fabulous. But I wanted to pick one that wasn't World War II. And this one is her latest. It came out earlier this year. I was really interested in this book because it's about Marie Curie. I didn't really know much about Marie Curie. I think the basic information you learn in school. Yep. So I was interested to learn about that. And then when I read the back and I saw how it was going to be, how she wrote it and how she formatted the book, I was really interested because it starts in Poland. So Marie grew up in Poland. Her name was Maria, was her given, and I wouldn't even try to pronounce her last name. But she was known as Maria. So she grew up in Poland. Her family was pretty poor. She was working as a governess to make some money. And Poland at the time, I think they were controlled by Russia, if I'm not mistaken. But there's no education for girls or women in Poland. So her dream was to take the train, go to Paris, go to Sorbonne and get educated. So she's a governess. She falls in love with the oldest son. They get engaged, and his mom doesn't approve. Doesn't think she's good enough for the family. She's poor. And says if they get married, she will disinherit him. So they will get nothing. Well, we know in real life that's not what happened. She does eventually, leave, and, they break up, and she leaves and goes to Paris and becomes Marie Curie that we know. But what Jillian did, which was really fascinating, was it was like a what if. Like, what if you had made one different decision, one different choice? How your life, not just your life, but the people around you, and in this case, like the science and the world, would have been different. So her what if is, what if she had stayed in Poland and married him, and she was still Maria, and they got married and lived in Poland, and how different her life would be. So it's like a dual timeline where it's alternating chapters between Marie and Maria. So it goes through that point in her life till the end, and just goes through, obviously the Marie chapters are based on the actual Marie Curie's life. It's got, her family and Pierre, of course. And so do the Maria chapters. They also have the same people, her family. They also have Pierre. And So it's interesting, not just how her life would have been different, and obviously, you know, education-wise and her contributions to science, but, like, how different her family's life could have been. Like, her different sisters, and, so yeah, it was just really, I just loved the way she told it, and it was just, you know, fun to learn. Fun to learn about her.
I really like this concept of the two, like, if I chose this path or this path. I think that was such a clever...
Yeah, because I think we've all done that at one time, right? Yeah, like, what if I did this instead of this? And, like, the domino effect, like, what else would that have changed later?
Did you have a favorite timeline?
I mean, I liked them both. I don't know if I had a favorite, though.
That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, I liked them both for different reasons. Obviously, Marie you're just learning more about her and, you know, the different struggles and everything she had to go through in life. But then the Maria, it was just, you know, learning about life in Poland at that time and what her opportunities would have been.
Yeah, it would have been really interesting. I should read that one.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that it's not World War II.
No, it's all war-free, I think.
I like that. Yeah, that sounds really neat. I mean, that's
I don't think so, no. Okay. Great book, though.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to her new book coming out, I think, in January, and it's going to be about Daisy Buchanan from The Great Gatsby.
Oh, yeah.
I'm super excited for that one.
Fun, too.
Yeah. All right, moving right along. To break up my royal reads, I'm going to put in I Was Anastasia. And this is sort of a historical fiction with suspense element. So this is obviously going to be about Anastasia Romanoff. And I've read a little bit about Anastasia, not a ton. So this is probably one of my first real, like, books on her. But what was cool about this book is it starts in, like, I don't remember what year, but it's Anastasia, like, quite a bit older. Maybe it won't tell me. Anyway, 1970. So it's, yeah, exactly. So Anastasia's found and alive.
Much older.
Except, is she? So, I mean, like, the first sentence of this book is, like, I am Anastasia, and if you don't believe me, then don't, or something to that effect. So then that timeline is working backwards to the day that Anastasia's family is brutally murdered. But the second timeline is working forward to that day with Anastasia young. It's kind of a trip.
Yeah.
As you're, like, watching these timelines merge together. Because at first, and it's not a huge spoiler that I'm telling you that, but at first I didn't get that's where we were headed. And that the end was basically going to end on the same day. Which was kind of super cool.
Yeah, that's really fun.
Yeah. So it was interesting. I didn't know a lot about their, like, imprisonment. They were, like, kept in a house for, like, a long time before they actually were taken off. But it was really interesting to see this other, like, supposed Anastasia as well. And, like, you'd spend the whole book going, do I believe her?
Oh, yeah.
Is she Anastasia? The whole time. Is she really found?
Yeah.
So it was a fun trip. And like I said, I'm a sucker for weird, unique ways of telling stories.
Yeah.
And of course I want Anastasia to be found.
Who doesn't?
So this was, like, right up my alley.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's interesting that it's almost maybe sort of reads like a psychological thriller in a way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's
a little bit.
Yeah.
It does. I mean, it's not really a mystery.
Yeah.
But yeah, it totally has a little bit of that, do you trust this narrator?
Yeah.
Element to it. While still giving you a lot of the history and, like, that whole look of Russia. And it was a really fun read and something totally different if you don't want to read World War II or royalties.
Yeah, that does sound like fun.
So, yeah, that's all I got on that
one. Okay, my next one, we're going to go back to World War II now.
Yeah, why not?
And we're going to do The Lilac Girls by Martha Hall Kelly. I just love the cover of that one. I don't know.
I actually love the cover of that one, too. I know. And the spine.
Yep, and it has a very typical World War II cover with the women's backs. Yep, to you. So this one is, like, 3 different storylines, 3 different female characters. We have Caroline Faraday, who is a New York socialite. She's like an activist. She works at the French consulate. She's trying to help the refugee children during the war. And then we have, I think it's Cassia. I think that's how you pronounce her name. She's a Polish, I think she's a teenager still. Growing up in Poland, she gets involved. She's a courier with the resistance. There's a lot of resistance in these books.
Yeah, that's true.
And she, gets caught and arrested and is sent to Ravensbrück with her mom and sister. And then there's Herta, who is a German doctor. She's a loyal German, so she, believes Hitler and, stands by him. But she's not too happy that she can't be a surgeon because he doesn't allow women to be surgeons. But she gets placed at Ravensbrück. I think she's the only female doctor there. I mean, it was Hitler's only female concentration camp. And so you learn about their stories, eventually how they all interconnect. But you also get the history of the Ravensbrück rabbits, which I don't think I knew about before this book. Warning, it is graphic.
Okay.
And it is intense. Basically, they were, I don't think they experimented on, the older women, but I think it was mostly the younger girls, but they medically experimented on them. Just, brutal torture. And they were nicknamed the rabbits not just because they were they're sort of like lab rats, but they would mangle their legs, and they would hop about the camp then, and so they would nickname them the rabbits. So that part, it was very interesting, but it was a little intense, very
dark.
You learn about all their journeys and how they all intersect, especially after the war. But what I love, and I didn't mention this before, but I love the author's notes in these books. I don't know if your books have a lot of author's notes, but I just love reading them because, they talk about, their inspiration for the books and, the research they did, and I just like reading them.
Yep.
And she talks about, Martha Hall Kelly, about her idea for the book came because she loves lilacs. She found an article in a magazine about Caroline. Caroline was a real person, and so was Herta, and some of the other characters were based on real people, but those two were actual real people. And she found an article about Caroline's family's country home, and the Lilac Gardens, which is where she got the name Lilac Girls for the book. But so she, went to the house and, got to go on a tour and learn more about her. And, and that took her to, because there was a photo of all these women, and she asked, who were these women? And the guide said that they were the rabbits. And so Caroline was very instrumental in, after the war, getting the rabbits, the surviving ones, to the U.S. for some medical treatment. So, and then they became really close. So that was just a little tidbit at the end. About the backstory.
I think that's a perfect way of saying this is why we read historical fiction, because you end up getting all these interesting tidbits and stories that you wouldn't have had otherwise. And now, I don't know, it's a fun way to learn history. And especially parts you didn't learn about in school. Right. Yeah. And now you're more intrigued, and so you keep reading these things. I do like that, because I find I do then can tend to keep going if I like the topic. And I do also read the author notes, because I tend to be the same way.
I just
you want to see what inspired it and what their thoughts are. Yeah, absolutely. Did you read the other one, The Road?
I have not.
Okay.
I'll be honest, I did start it, and I think it was just at that time, it was just not, I wasn't feeling it at that moment. But I do have it, and it is interesting because that one is about Caroline's mother in World War I Russia. And then she had her third book came out earlier this year that I think might be Caroline's great grandmother. I don't know, but it's in Civil War era. So it is interesting how this author has gone back with this family.
Yep.
So I do want to continue reading.
My question was going to initially be would you recommend reading them chronologically or the way that they were written, or did it matter? But I
don't think it would matter.
It probably would.
Yeah. No.
This was just me being curious.
Yeah.
Sometimes I like to see chronologically, just because you sometimes can be like, oh, that makes sense why this all happened in this book.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
not that you can't do it otherwise.
Yeah, no, I don't think so, because I don't even know if Caroline was born yet in The Lost Roses, so I don't know if she would have even been, like, in the book at all.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, I'm not entirely sure about that, though.
Probably fine to read them independently.
Yeah.
I've meant to ask you in the beginning, do you find that you read historical fiction, like, year-round? Do you read it at certain times of the year? Like...
I mean, I do read it all year round. It just sort of depends on my mood. I do tend to read them more in the winter.
Yeah.
I don't know what is, I guess winter historical fiction just goes together.
Goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
Some cocoa.
Those like cold dark days we have here in Tucson. But yeah, no, I mean, I'll read them all year. It's all about my mood.
Yeah. No, I totally understand that.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like that I probably do the same thing, to be honest, because I feel like summer is always spent reading rom-coms or lighter reads, even though I'm not on a beach.
Yeah.
I don't know why I feel like I need to do that, but I get it.
It's too hot here to read this intense historical fiction.
Right? All right. Going back to royalty.
Okay.
But it's in India this time, so that's kind of fun. I'm going to show 2 books just because the one I really love is the second book in the trilogy, but you have to read the first book to get to the second book. And I'm going to also apologize if I slaughter all of these names. So the first book is The 20th Wife by Indu Sundarsan. It's a trilogy. And this is about the empress that most people don't know about, Maharisha. And what's to know, aside from the fact that she was amazing and incredibly powerful in her own right, and yet we still don't know much about her. Her niece is who the Taj Mahal was built for.
Oh.
Right? But she marries... Okay, so... in The 20th Wife, she is actually already married to somebody else. But then somehow the prince finds her and is like, I need another wife. So she becomes the 20th wife. And the first book is all about her, like, becoming that 20th wife, finding her place in the harem, learning all of the dynamics between the other wives, and then, like, and getting to know this husband. The second book, Feast of Roses, is all about her in power, which is why I like the second book better. So at this stage, she is now the reigning empress and the reigning wife. And then she has 3 children, and then she's definitely doing a lot of political, like, movements with her children around. And it was just very interesting, especially because I haven't read a lot set in India. And I don't know much about the harems and all that. And I loved that you wouldn't have thought that these ladies would have had the power they do, because they're hidden behind these veils and no one sees them. And yet they're still able to, like, run the court.
Oh, yeah.
Whether through the husband or through other, like, courtiers. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. Other people who are in the court. Friday night. So this was really cool. And again, I just didn't know a lot about this time period. I have now read a lot by this author. She really, like, I don't know, she really captures her India really well. Like, and it's just, I don't know, her writing is really well done, and this is probably my favorite, like, royal read, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she captures them really well, and it's a really great, like, love story between the two, that I don't know if that's actually truth or not, but I'm going to hold on to it being truth, because it was quite the story, that you get swept up into.
Yeah, those sound really interesting. Yeah, I haven't read that much about that time either.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, if you ever want something to start in on this, like, time period, I think it's 1700s, I want to or is it older than that? It might be older than that. Don't quote me on the time. Does it tell me? Oh, 1601.
Oh, wow. Okay.
For the time. Huh. I really have a time period. Just in different
countries.
So do
I. It's okay.
That's really funny. So yeah, something totally outside my wheel normally, but I've loved it. And like I said, now I search out every book she writes.
Oh, that's good.
And it has been a long while since she's come out with a new one, which is very sad. So hopefully she'll have one again someday.
Yeah. Well, yeah, those sound really interesting.
Yeah.
You just made my to-read pile bigger.
Yay! I so hope you read these, because then we can talk about them, and you can tell me, hopefully, that you also agree that the romance was wonderful.
Well, I love romance, so I'm sure I'll like
it. Good.
Okay, so my final pick, speaking of authors that you just gravitate towards and read all their books, for me, it's Kristen Harmel. This is her newest, The Forest of Vanishing Stars. I mean, I could have picked any number of her books.
Can we just note that we know right away it's World War II, because there's a female with her back to us.
Yeah, and a lot of them, they have, like, the little airplanes, or they have, like, you know, the Eiffel Tower, or, you know, some landmark in London, or, you know, the World War II countries. Yeah, so, yeah, it's very easy to tell what time period this is. But, yeah, she's become one of my, like, you know, automatic reads. This is the 4th book of hers I read. I know she has other ones that I haven't read yet that I need to read. But what was interesting about this one was her previous 3 were World War II France. She took a little break and went to Poland. So
I'm noticing a theme.
Yeah, I know.
Not only World War II, but Poland.
Yeah, I guess I didn't even realize a lot of these were in Poland. So, and then this one's interesting too, because the story almost entirely takes place in the forests of Poland, which is not something I've read too much about. So we start with this, like, old woman. Her name's Jeruska. She is, like, she thinks she's called by the forest or something to kidnap this 2-year-old girl. And it's on her 2nd birthday, too. Okay. So she kidnaps this girl, takes her into the forest, renames her, I think Yona is her name. And so they just live by themselves in the forest. They, you know, hunt and gather their food. They build shelters. They, you know, she teaches her, you know, the different herbs to use for medicine and, you know, gathering stuff. And, you know, most importantly, though, she teaches her not to, like, trust people or interact with people. And she thinks she has a reason for telling her this. So it's just the 2 of them. So this girl grows up. She becomes, like, a young adult. I don't remember how old Jeruska is at this point, but she eventually dies. And so Yona is left on her own in the forest. And then one day she comes across this family. They're Jewish. They are hiding out in the forest to get away from the Nazis, because the Nazis have, like, they put all the Jews in the ghettos, and then they're, like, taking them from the ghettos to the concentration camps. So people would, like, flee into the forests to get away. And also the thing about living in the forest when you're trying to, like, not be, you know, get away from people, is you have to constantly move. Like, you can't stay in one place for too long.
Right.
So she finds this family. You know, she, you know, is internally like, should I help them? You know, they need help, though. I mean, but am I supposed to trust these people?
I've been told not to.
Yeah. So, I mean, she does help them. And then they kind of, you know, she's trying to help them, and they're not as receptive as she would like them to be. So she leaves them. And then she comes across this other group. She finds these 2 men who are, like, trying to catch fish in the river or the stream. And so she's like, you know, I could show you a better way to do it. Right. Like, I know how to do this. So, and they have, like, a whole group of people that they have to feed. And so she's, you know, has to, you know, like, well, I can come with you and help you, because winter's coming. Right. You know, you're going to need better shelters, and you're going to need to, like, you know, gather food now to get you through the winters. So it's just a wonderful story about, you know, her journey and her with this group of people. And I mean, they are based on these actual groups of people that you know, did, you know, hide out and survive in the forest during the war. It's also about love and betrayal and you know, some family secrets that come back.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's just a wonderful book. I just love her books. And so I think she said her next one is going to go back to World War II France. Which I'm excited about, but I like this one. It was just a little different from her other ones.
Right? Well, it's kind of fun that she did something that was a little outside of what she normally writes, just to keep it interesting. Yeah. Now, did the character know she was kidnapped?
I think so. Okay. I don't remember exactly, like, you know, what Jeruska told her, like, how, like, you know, why she did it. I think she was just like, meant to do it.
Okay. Interesting. That's a whole different upbringing.
Yeah. Yeah. It was very interesting.
I will say, you had us read one for one of our other book chats of hers, and I did really enjoy her writing as well. Mm-hmm. Yep. Good dialogue, good pace, good descriptions. Yeah.
Yeah. So, love her.
Excellent. Okay, my last pick. Going back to England. It's The Captive Queen by Allison Weir. I love Allison Weir. Like, I think she has to be probably don't quote me on this, but she's got to be close to one of the leading experts today.
Yeah, she has a lot of books
on the Tudors and that time. This is not Tudors, but she's very, very scholarly and one of the best sources I've read. I read actually a lot of her nonfiction as well. And you can see quotes in her fiction from her actual documents and nonfiction, so that says something.
Yeah.
This is about Eleanor of Aquitaine, which is way before the Tudors. This is like Henry II. This is the beginning of the Plantagenets, whatever.
Yeah,
before the Tudors, the group before them. And so I don't know much about Eleanor of Aquitaine. I don't know if you have read a lot about her.
I haven't, no.
So this is starts out with her being her first marriage in France with Louis, I want to say like the 12th or 7th. I don't totally remember which
12th or 7th
one. I just remember dash. I'm trying to see the visual of the Roman numeral in my head. And he was a very pious king, and it was a very unhappy marriage. She did some like crusade stuff, but it was not what she was really looking for. She meets Henry II, and it's kind of a whirlwind, really like passionate like thing. And so she gets her other marriage annulled, not annulled, but like it's not divorce either.
Yeah. Whatever
they did, and she marries Henry II, and then she has a bunch of kids with him, which then ends up leading into like Richard III, or anyway, it goes down the lines of all the big English people you all know. So it's about that, and then being married to Henry II, and then it's also during like her whole life. So it's during the part where she's held captive on her own property for years because Henry gets tired of her and is like, whatever, I'm going to banish you to this like 40 acres and you have a lot of space, you'll be fine. And like her kids kind of come visit her, sort of. But anyway, it was just really interesting. You learn a lot about her life, obviously, because it goes through all of that. And it was just really interesting. I've not read a lot of that, and it's one of Trisha's favorite like queens, so I kind of always felt like I should read one.
Yeah.
And it was worthwhile. Like, again, the relationship was really great until it was really sour. Her kids are interesting. She's a very strong character. I think she was a very strong leader in real life as well. Like, she brought a lot of like poetry and stuff into the English courts and did some of those like big historical things. Like, without her, we wouldn't have had England wouldn't have had
the royal we.
Yeah, right. So it was just a really great look at that writing, or at that historical figure. And again, I love Allison Weir. Her writing, I will admit, is a little bit getting used to it, because she tends to write in like almost a third person something. It's a little bit distant. I can't quite think of the right grammar terms. So you have to kind of like get over that. It's not first person. It's a little off. It's not quite, maybe it's second. I don't know. It's a little bit different. You just have to get into the rhythm of it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And for some reason she writes like all of her fiction like that.
Oh, okay.
But I still really recommend it, especially if you don't know anything about Eleanor of Aquitaine and you're like, hey, that sounds really interesting. She's quite the figure. Like I said, she went on crusades. She brought all this stuff into the English courts, had a passionate affair with Henry II, and seriously has a bunch of children that become quite famous.
Yeah.
So this was a good read if you need something about your English history.
I guess I do after hearing all your books. I need to like go further back in time with my reading.
Yeah, she's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 6 or 7 children. Wow. It's a lot.
Yeah. Well, I like that they have the little family tree.
I love the family tree. It has a map too.
Oh, yeah. You have to have those.
Yeah, I think most of these do. Yep, it does. So, anyway, good read if you want something different.
Oh, good.
Parting thoughts on our historical fiction. Yes, we realize we read very nichely.
Yeah, that we need to expand.
Maybe branch out. So I guess that'll be our goal.
Yeah, which I do. I mean, I do. I just not as much as I thought I did.
Oh,
okay, thank you.
Yeah, I agree. It was kind of funny realizing how much we read in our little spots.
Yeah. But we read what we read, and we like what we like.
Yeah.
So.
So that's that. And you can go tell us what you think we should read, and we will consider it.
Yeah.
All right. So next week, I'm joined with Jen, and we are going to be reading She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. I apologize. I don't have a book right now because it's currently being reprinted because it was so popular. But we will have books next week. So we can talk about the book still. Yeah, so it's a fantasy historical fiction. That's right.
Oh.
Right?
I'm just going to continue on with this theme.
Yes. Only it's about the birth of the Ming Dynasty. So totally
fun.
different kind of historical fiction.
Yeah.
With a little bit of fantasy. Totally something I like. So yeah.
That sounds interesting.
Check in with us next week and you'll see what Jen and I think. I'm sure we'll have lots of thoughts.
Yep.
All right. Bye.
Bye.